Part 23. Global Copy, My Talent is Called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 221. Outside the copy, Professor Who's face looked a little strange. I watched Luzaoki hesitate to speak several times. This dungeon experience was actually a failure. Although the review of the game is not bad, it is indeed a failed experience. You may not believe it, but the reason for the failure was actually that one of the team members had too strong a personal ability, which caused the other teammates to fail to perform at all. Director Who originally planned to give Luzaoki a few words to restrain himself, because the light he emits is so dazzling that it overshadows other teammates. But he took it back before the words reached his mouth. After all, it's their ability to be strong, so what position do I have to make irresponsible remarks? Originally, after the dungeon of Mermaid Lake, after a short break, Director Who would organize everyone to discuss each other's cooperation and shortcomings, and learn lessons and sum up experiences. But there is always a discrepancy between reality and ideals. The starting lineup was obviously chosen, but everyone was still doing last-ditch damage online. As a result, Luzaoki ran over to the solo lane as a support position, killing all the way through, wiping out the opponent's group, and finally exploded the opponent's crystal. No one expected this outcome. What to summarize? Isn't this wave of last hits in place? Didn't buy the right equipment? What's more, there are two players who paddled the entire process without making any contribution and simply won. This is a summary. Turn the table.jpg. There is no need to summarize at all. If this continues, every copy will have this result. What is the significance of this training? Director Who looked embarrassed, but finally decided to talk to Luzaoki. The two of them whispered for a while. Director Who finally breathed a sigh of relief when he came back, while Luzaoki looked astonished, and the expression on her face was even more relaxed and happy. What? Let me paddle? This is good. This can be done. When Luzaoki heard Director Who's hesitant request, she immediately patted her chest and promised that she would not be a gimmick or steal money by being an assistant honestly. You will never stick a cross in the ground as soon as you enter the picture. My assistant, Lu, is the most serious person. After reaching the second dungeon, Luzaoki really became more honest. He meticulously applied buffs to everyone, and after finishing the buffs, he cheered everyone on with a smile. Director Who saw this and felt a sense of guilt in his heart for no reason. This copy is called Golden City. Although the name is very domineering, the venue is actually in a dark underground passage. The monsters they faced were a group of fanatical mining monsters, dwarves, and the strange monsters they raised. In this dark tunnel, you can see ore scattered on the ground everywhere, as well as rails arranged on the ground for transporting minerals. There were torches hanging on the tunnel walls, which brought a ray of light to the long and dark passage. After entering the dungeon, Zhang Yang, who had the strongest defense, walked at the front of the team without hesitation. Behind him is Li Laban, who looks wary. His perception ability is pretty good. In addition, the Ranger Major has learned related investigation work, so he can warn everyone in time when he walks in front and notices something is wrong. Needless to say, Liu Yang will continue to be unlucky for a while after using his innate ability, so he is protected by everyone, fearing that he will encounter any accidents. And Lin Qingqing, who originally said I am not afraid of anything, is now a little frightened, as if afraid of the dark? Still afraid of something? As everyone is walking in the passage, will they encounter a dwarf monster wandering in the tunnel carrying a mining pickaxe? There are even some dwarves who still follow their instincts and dig in the tunnels even after they have turned into monsters. These dwarves were all eliminated by Zhang Yang and Li Laban in front of them in a few clicks. Li Laban was immediately shocked when he saw this and shouted quickly, "Don't!" It's Lin Qingqing's voice. Director Who. A huge number of tunnels crisscross the area, like a maze. Without thinking, Zhang Yang threw the torch he had taken off the wall of the passage over, and then he realized that these red dots were all the eyes of a huge bat. Before he finished speaking, he heard a boom. How can I survive in a dungeon with such little endurance? Crackling. Lin Qingqing immediately turned to look to the left like a reflex. As a result, Lu Zioqi, the sixth child, took out a flashlight from nowhere, turned on the light and put it on her chin. Lu Zioqi quickly caught her, and after a closer look, she actually fainted from fright. It is worth mentioning that at this moment everyone is bearing the holy protection exerted by Lu Zioqi. There seemed to be something in his mouth, and he sprayed it on the torch. The sound of stones hitting the wall echoed far away in the empty tunnel. As he spoke, he picked up a stone from the ground and threw it in front of him. The two elves spinning above their heads gave them huge attribute blessings. The team lost 2 people instantly. Lu Zioqi shrank his neck. He saw that Lin Qingqing seemed to be afraid of something. He had wanted to scare her for a long time, but he didn't expect that she was so fragile. Lin Qingqing was caught off guard and froze when she saw this scene. The next moment, an earth-shattering scream echoed in the tunnel. Drink. Zhang Yang turned into a little silver man again, with his whole body shining with silver light. His feet made a dong 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 sound in the passage, and he rushed forward to face the bat monster. At this time, the bat army has arrived. When they reached the new map, Li Laban's expression suddenly became much more solemn. He stretched out his hand to stop everyone who was about to move forward, and whispered, "Don't move." Everyone was frightened by the astonishing number and size of the bats and held their breath, but the next moment, a deafening scream came from behind. But now I can't care about this. At the critical moment, Li Laban rolled over, avoided the attack of the bat, and pulled out a torch from the side of the tunnel. A group of bat monsters were frightened by the movement and started to stir. However, Lin Qingqing, who had unleashed this huge destructive power, froze up and fell straight back. The alarmed bat monsters finally reacted, making strange noises, and rushed towards everyone in an overwhelming manner. This also makes them energetic and confident. Boom, strong flames swept the entire place. Director who could see clearly. Just when everyone was shocked by the scene in front of them, Lu Zioqi quietly slipped to Lin Qingqing's left side and patted her right shoulder. I was so frightened that I fainted. When she subconsciously turned her face to the right to look for who it was, Lu Zioqi blew on the left again. The passage in front suddenly collapsed, and Zhang Yang was caught off guard and fell directly into the hole. Suddenly, dense red dots appeared at the top of the tunnel, which made everyone's trypophobia almost relapse. At this time, Li Laban's role came to light. He was always able to quickly determine the route by knocking in front of him. Along the way, there was never a repeated tunnel. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 222. The flames instantly ignited the fur of the bat monsters, causing damage to them but also causing a certain amount of confusion and delaying the attack. At this time, Zhang Yang also jumped up from the hole below, made fists with both hands, and struck in the air. Bang, the air exploded. It was as if an invisible bomb exploded among the bat monsters, instantly tearing several bat monsters apart. Zhang Yang also took advantage of the situation and turned back, landing next to Li Laban again. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and said in his heart that it was so dangerous. The hole below is so deep that there is no end in sight. If it really fell, his life would probably be in danger. Fortunately, he quickly grasped the protruding rock on the side with quick eyesight and hands. He turned his fingers into claws and inserted his fingers into the stone wall to stop the falling trend. Only then can he turn over and climb out. At this time, Lu Yang was also ready, and a huge magic circle was unfolded in the tunnel. Densely packed small robots flew out and attacked the bat swarm. Lu Zioki folded her hands and watched the show, watching this rare scene with relish. What is an immersive movie experience? Isn't this what it is? However, the bats who extinguished the flames on their bodies cannot be underestimated after they regain their strength. I saw them flapping their wings and opening their mouths. Invisible sound wave shocks were emitted from their mouths. The robot summoned by Liu Yang was torn apart by the sound wave, and was destroyed almost instantly. Li Laban's expression changed when he saw this scene. His body should not be flamboyant, as it was quite fragile. At this moment, he retreated back in a hurry and hid behind Lu Zioki in an instant. Then he seemed to have found a sense of security and was visibly relieved. Lu Zioki. Director who? Zhang Yang's face in the sound wave was also a little distorted. He gritted his teeth and leaned over to lift up the stones that fell from the tunnel wall and fell to the ground. All the strength in his body was condensed into one point, and he threw the stones fiercely. The stone was not hard, and was shattered into pieces by the sound wave in mid-air. However, it was more powerful and covered a wider area, and it hit the group of bat monsters hard. Many bat monsters were hit and fell to the ground, and many bats had to stop emitting sound waves in order to avoid the attack. For a moment, the pressure on Zhang Yang was greatly reduced, and his expression became relaxed. Liu Yang's voice also came from behind, "Zhang Yang, get out of the way." Upon hearing this, Zhang Yang stood up and retreated without hesitation, hiding aside. Under Liu Yang's feet, a huge machine gradually emerged and began to change its form. In the end, it became a very exaggerated big sniper. Lu Zioki looked familiar. It seemed to be the one he had used when summoning the Gundam before. But the scale is much larger than before. The light from the sniper's muzzle began to flicker, gradually becoming dazzling. The next moment, the light dimmed instantly. A laser shot out that almost filled the entire tunnel. The fierce light drowned all the bat monsters, and all the monsters were annihilated in this AoE attack with full damage, turning into streaks of white light. After the blow was over, it felt like the entire tunnel had been melted a little by the laser. Steam was rising from the top and walls, and the ground. Since the bottom of the tunnel itself was empty and there was only a thin layer of ground, after this attack, the ground completely disappeared, leaving a huge abyss in place. Li Laban stepped forward to take a look and shook his head helplessly. There is no way to pass this tunnel. Let's change the route. At this time, Lin Qingqing, who was in a coma, groaned and woke up with a. She just fell into a coma due to fear and stress reaction, and her strong physical fitness allowed her to recover quickly. As soon as she opened her eyes, she saw a face that she hated very close to her. She couldn't help but get excited and kicked her legs back in an attempt to get further away from him. Lu Zioki said with a wicked smile, "So you are so afraid of ghosts." The word ghost seems to be a taboo for Lin Qingqing. When she heard this word, she blushed instantly and said loudly, "No, no, no." "Then look what's behind you." Lu Zioki pointed behind Lin Qingqing. Lin Qingqing's face turned pale with fright at these words. She jumped up almost instantly and threw herself forward. She almost fell to the ground and was chewed in the mud. Fortunately, Zhang Yang kindly extended his hand to stop her. Lin Qingqing immediately hid behind Zhang Yang and shivered. Zhang Yang said a little helplessly, "Okay, there was no ghost behind you just now, it was Director Hu." Upon hearing this, Lin Qingqing carefully poked half of her head out from behind Zhang Yang to observe the situation. Director Hu. When Lin Qingqing saw the expressionless Director Hu standing there, she was obviously relieved, and then she glared at Lu Zioki and gritted her teeth. Lu Zioki shrugged, looking innocent. "What are you looking at? I didn't say the person behind you was a ghost before. Besides, aren't you afraid of ghosts?" Lu Zioki muttered. "You." Lin Qingqing was speechless for a moment and touched Zioki with her fingers. Her whole body was shaking, but she was so angry that she couldn't speak. Director, who was a little helpless, glared at Luzioki angrily, coughed and said, "That's enough, the same team must live in harmony." He did not tell Luzioki's previous behavior of scaring Lin Qingqing into unconsciousness, because this makes the already disharmonious relationship between them even more tense. He could only glare at Luzioki fiercely, telling him to restrain himself. Luzioki curled her lips and remained silent. This little episode passed, and several people returned the same way, and went around to another passage to continue moving forward. This tunnel was crooked and extended downwards. Several people walked along the tunnel, and before long they came to a huge pit. Countless ore raw materials are piled up on one side of the pit, while on the other side the sky is filled with red light and heat is rising. It's actually rolling lava. There was still bubbling on top, and from time to time, broken pebbles fell into the magma on the edge of the pit, and were instantly melted. Seeing this posture, Luzioki poked Zhang Yang with a smile. "Hey, tell me, if you fall in, can you withstand it?" Zhang Yang looked at the red liquid, swallowed hard, and shook his head like a rattle. "I don't want to experience this feeling." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 223. Li Laban quickly surveyed the surrounding environment, returned to the team and said to everyone, "There seems to be no road around here." As he said that, he pointed to the deep pit below. "We have to go down and take a look." Everyone nodded. Lu Yang summoned something similar to a frisbee and suspended it on the ground. Everyone stood on the flying disc and slowly landed in the pit. Although this thing can't fly, it's still very handy to use. Although the view from above seems to be wide, there is no intuitive feeling for the amount of ore piled under the pit. When they arrived at the pit, everyone stood beside the ore and couldn't help but exclaimed in wonder. "This dwarf is so good at digging." The ore is piled up like hills, and each ore pile must weigh at least 100 tons. Everyone looked for a way around the ore pile and separated. Director, who took the opportunity to follow Luzioki and whispered to him, "I have already told Lin Qingqing that she will not deliberately target you again. You should also be calm." Luzioki nodded and waved her hand magnanimously to express that "I don't remember the faults of villains. As long as she doesn't act weird again, I won't pay attention to her." In fact, Luzioki's ears were sensitive and she could hear clearly when Director Hu was whispering to Lin Qingqing. He also said this to Lin Qingqing, "I have already told Luzioki that he will not deliberately target you again, so please stay calm. But it doesn't matter, it's better to do less than to do more. As long as that bitch doesn't keep her cynical gaze on herself, anything can be said." After receiving Luzioki's assurance, Director Hu finally breathed a sigh of relief and finally suppressed the disharmonious factors in the team. Although the pit is big, Luzioki and the others are outnumbered, and each of them has some exploration methods, so it is not too troublesome to find the way. Not long after, Lin Qingqing was heard shouting, "Come here quickly." Everyone heard the sound and rushed there. Lin Qingqing stood in front of a dark cave entrance, hesitant. Luzioki took a look and knew that she would definitely not dare to go in, so he asked casually, "Have you checked the situation in the cave?" Lin Qingqing shook her head. Li Laban and Lu Yang looked at each other, and Li Laban said, "I'll do it." With that said, he turned on his natural ability and became invisible in front of everyone, and slowly moved towards the cave. Several people waited quietly at the entrance of the cave. After a while, a rustling sound came from inside the cave. At the same time, sharp-eyed Luzioki saw an embarrassed figure running wildly in the cave. It was Li Laban, who had just entered. Luzioki shouted, "Go and support him." Saying that, he took the lead and rushed into the cave. Zhang Yang was stunned when he heard this, and then followed him without hesitation. As soon as the two entered the cave, they ran into Leoben, who was speeding towards him. Unexpectedly, he could not help but breathe a sigh of relief when he saw everyone. Instead, his face changed drastically and he shouted, "Let's go. Get out first." Before Lu Xiaoqi and Zhang Yang could figure out the situation, they were dragged out of the cave by Leoben. Lu Xiaoqi looked back while running back. Then he gasped. In the darkness, there were densely packed monsters with 6 scarlet eyes and 8 long, hairy legs. Crypto spider. Their number is hard to estimate, and they are like a black tide rushing towards everyone. But she was not afraid of this kind of monster at all. With a twist of her staff, a chain of lightning was shot out by her. Lu Yang had already been preparing when he heard Lu Xiaoqi talking about support. At this moment, he used his skills without hesitation, and the formation was once again spread out under his feet. The number of spiders was huge, and the spider silk they sprayed was overwhelming. The entrance to the cave was covered almost instantly, and the robots that entered the cave were naturally annihilated. Countless exquisite robots that were only half a man in height continuously poured out from the vortex behind him, turned into a torrent of steel and poured into the cave, and began to fight with the cave spiders. Although they are small in size, they are strong and flexible, and they hold sharp weapons and firearms in their hands. They can directly suppress the opponent in a firefight. The spider silk is extremely sticky and tough, and the covered robot cannot break free no matter how hard it struggles. On the contrary, the more it struggles, the tighter it becomes. Even without previous attacks, the living habits and weaknesses of this common monster are still recorded in textbooks. With one move of her staff, a long fire dragon spurted out, covering the cave entrance in an instant. However, the burrowing spider is not a fuel-efficient lamp, otherwise it would not be able to drive Leoben to crawl around and urinate. I saw that they also used their own long-range attack, spinning silk. The crypt spider ran head-on into the blazing flames, screaming as it burned. The fire phoenix rushed into the cave and passed over them. Without hesitation, he pointed at the entrance of the cave and said, "2nd Battalion, Ba. Lu Yang, pull out your Italian cannon." The fire phoenix pounced in, and the originally tough spider silk was instantly ignited and turned into nothing. But there were so many of them that the burned spiders in front had no way to retreat and were forced into the flames by the spiders behind them, turning into torches. Their fur was immediately set on fire, and their strange mouths were densely packed, squeezing together and rubbing shoulders. Squeak. Lu Yang frowned slightly, and just as he was about to make a move, he heard Lin Qingqing on the side shout impatiently, "Let me do it." Lu Xiaoqi's hair stood on end, and powerful force erupted from her feet, dragging Leoben and Zhang Yang out of the cave in an instant. After saying that, the flames that were even bigger than before formed into a fire phoenix in mid-air, let out a soft cry, and rushed into the cave with its wings rolled up. Or maybe they don't pay much attention to personal hygiene. Their bodies are covered with oil and there are long burrs on their legs. Robots armed with cutting-edge technology clearly have the upper hand in combat. Everyone knows that it is afraid of fire and lightning. Fire. Lin Qingqing is indeed afraid of ghosts and a little afraid of the dark. At the same time, Lu Yang's mechanical summoning technique was also ready. The mechanical army assembles. But the one who was one step faster than him was Lin Qingqing. The crypt spider inside was also frightened by the huge fire and screamed strangely. Countless turbid white liquids sprayed out from their mouths. The aroma of burnt protein suddenly filled the air. When the liquid met the air, it quickly condensed into a solid and turned into sticky spider silk, shrouding the robot. When facing robots before, their huge number was an advantage, but when faced with the flames they feared, this became a fatal flaw. This ignited one of them, immediately igniting the one next to it, and the fire spread immediately. The burned-out crypt spider was immediately blown away by the thunder and lightning, and turned into streaks of white light. Global copy, My talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 224. And this fire is very supernatural. Under normal circumstances, in this closed environment, the flame will not burn so violently, because there is no air. But the flames on the fire phoenix ignored this rule and were still burning in this dark, humid, and closed environment, unstoppable. Many crypt spiders who couldn't bear the burning of their bodies began to run around randomly, which in turn carried the fire further and ignited more crypt spiders. There are also some spiders still rushing out of the cave entrance with flames. Liu Yang immediately commanded the robot army to seal the entrance of the cave tightly, so that not even a cave spider could break out. Everyone outside the cave only heard screams coming from inside, and the smell of barbecue filled the air. Lu Zioki swallowed and muttered to himself, "You can eat it even if you cut off the head and tail. The protein is 10 times that of beef. Spread some sauce and spices and add some chili and cumin. The kids next door will make them cry." Zhang Yang, who was closest to him, didn't understand what he was talking about and couldn't help but ask curiously, "Classmate Lu, what are you talking about?" "It's nothing, I'm trying to save them," Lu Zioki replied seriously, touching her belly as she spoke. "I'm really hungry this time." After a while, the movement in the cave slowly disappeared. Liu Yang seemed to have sent a robot to investigate, and then slowly opened the passage. All the cave spiders inside have turned into white light, and the originally cold and damp cave walls have become much drier than before. A lot of materials fell on the ground. Everyone gained a lot from picking up along the way. It is worth mentioning that no one had picked up the bat materials before, and they all fell into the abyss. After passing through this tunnel that was temporarily inhabited by cave spiders, they finally arrived at the location of the boss. The City of Gold. The dungeon is called Golden City, which refers to the city ruled by the boss. The entire city is made of gold, coupled with colored glaze, emeralds and luminous pearls, making it look resplendent and dazzling even in the dark underground. Lu Zioki was so greedy when she saw it that she wanted to move it away directly. It's a pity that the city is integrated and cannot be shaken by outsiders. Lu Zioki still has some ability to destroy it if he uses his ultimate move, but it is undoubtedly a fantasy to move it away intact. Not only that, these golds were enchanted by the Dwarf King using special abilities, and were blessed by the magic circle. Not only were they indestructible, but they could also absorb the power of magic. In other words, when fighting in the city, you can only use cold weapons. Lin Qingqing is completely disabled, and Liu Yang is also half disabled. This information not only came from Li Leiban, who acted as a scout, but was also clearly seen by Lu Zioki using the Eye of True Knowledge. In the end, he could only give up the bold idea in his heart. In addition to the big boss Dwarf King who exists as a lord, there are countless fanatical dwarf warriors and dwarf swordsmen and axemen in the city. These guys spend their free time drinking and reveling in the city. To describe them as alcoholic is a perfect way to describe them. If you find an enemy, you will scream and rush to fight. In this golden city where the power of magic will be absorbed and weakened to the extreme, these dwarves who have maxed out their physique and strength and stimulated their potential with alcohol are undoubtedly very scary. Drinking alcohol is not a bad thing for them, but a very powerful buff. After long-term drinking, alcohol paralyzes their nerves, making their movements slightly sluggish. At the same time, they ignore the pain and are fearless in the face of any enemy. Master Lu once said this: "Those who are stunned are afraid of being arrogant, and those who are arrogant are afraid of losing their lives." These monsters are stupid, violent, and desperate. This is an existence that gives any enemy a headache. In order to kill the Lord Monster Dwarf King, Lu Zioki and his party must find a way to break through their defenses. In fact, the best way is to attract monsters and eat away at their numbers bit by bit. But according to Li Leiban's observation, the dwarves carry wine bottles even when patrolling. They can take a sip of old wine whenever they find an enemy at any time, and then come up screaming to fight the enemy. As long as they withstand the first wave of attacks, the movement is enough to attract the attention of other dwarves, and then a steady stream of dwarves will pour out from all directions. It is very difficult to defeat them one by surprise. Several people sat outside the city to discuss countermeasures. Zhang Yang and Lu Yang proposed several strategies, but Li Laban, who had done the survey, rejected them one by one. Lin Qingqing didn't even raise her head, holding the book in both hands, not caring about what they were discussing. Lu Zioqi rolled his eyes, put on a smirk on his face, cleared his throat tactically, attracting the attention of several people, and then said, "Everyone, my suggestion is, how about we not value peace? Everyone? Are you crazy? When you download a dungeon to fight monsters, you will die or I will die. How can peace be valued?" Seeing everyone looking at him in confusion, with confusion and doubt on their faces, Lu Zioqi chuckled and took out a jar of wine. "Don't they like drinking? Shouldn't we let them drink to their heart's content? Bacchanalian dream. After drinking it, you will fall into a state of drunken life and death. In this state, your physical strength and mana will continue to be restored, and 300 points of physical strength and mana will be restored every second. The state of drunk life and dreams of death can be superimposed without an upper limit, and will be activated with a delay of 10 minutes. The duration is determined by the amount of Bacchus dream taken by the user and his/her own physical constitution. The state of drunk life and death is not calculated as a debuff and is not subject to abnormal state reduction. Everyone immediately understood his plan, but Li Laban still had some hesitation on his face. There are at least hundreds of dwarves in the city, not to mention thousands. I'm afraid your bottle of wine is not enough. Don't worry. That's enough. Lu Zioqi waved his hand, and a bunch of wine jars suddenly appeared on the ground. He clapped his chest and felt disgusted. Everyone looked at him strangely. Just by looking at the attributes of this Bacchus dream, you can tell that it is a rare level prop or a one-time use. It will be gone after you drink it. Even though the attributes are a bit useless, the price is still high. Using something to paralyze monsters is undoubtedly equivalent to using paper money to hit people, killing them forcefully. How can ordinary people think of such a thing? Others download copies just to make money. This guy is here, come over and throw coins. It's really yours. Global copy. My talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 225. The plan was quickly approved. Li Laban used stealth to bring the Bacchus Dream *99 that Lu Zioqi took out into the Golden City. The taste of this rare quality wine is naturally indescribable. Li Laban just put the jar on the roadside and opened the lid. Many dwarves came over smelling the aroma of wine. The dwarves were still somewhat defensive about the wine that appeared out of nowhere. But soon, the first crab-eating dwarf appeared. The dwarf seemed to have drunk too much and was staggering when walking. He looked so confused that he probably even forgot his last name, so naturally he was not on guard. He drunkenly picked up a jar of wine, took a big gulp of it, slurped his lips, his eyes immediately lit up, and he started to show off while holding the jar. The other dwarves were hesitant at first, but when they saw him finishing one jar and reaching for the second jar, some dwarves couldn't help it anymore and rushed up to pick up the wine jar. Then the third, fourth, fifth. Soon, the dwarves surrounding here each held 2 jars of Bacchus Dream in their hands and started drinking with open bellies. Not only this place, Li Laban ran around more than a dozen times, and all the streets in the Golden City were soon decorated with Dream of Dionysus. Almost all the dwarves fell into sweet sleep. Even the patrolling dwarves are no exception. The plan goes through. After receiving the message from Li Laban, everyone walked into the Golden City in a big way. At this moment, this gorgeous city is like a naked Ji Yin, lying on the bed, opening the door of convenience for everyone. The streets were littered with dwarfs lying down and sleeping soundly. Everyone ignored them and went straight to the castle in the center of the Golden City. The master of the Golden City, the Dwarf King, is waiting for everyone to arrive there. At the castle gate, the dwarf guards guarding the castle were nowhere to be seen. A few people walked forward for a certain distance, only to find several dwarves holding back a stream lying on the roadside. Several jars of wine were smashed next to them, and the aroma of wine overflowed. It is estimated that these guards are relatively loyal, and they feel good after drinking it, and they want to offer it to their king. Before the result was reached, the effect of Bacchus' dream was activated, and several dwarves fell into a deep sleep on the spot. This Bacchus dream effect of drunkenness, dreams, and death is actually quite buggy. It is not considered a debuff, and any resistance or reduction of abnormal status is ineffective against it. It can only be endured with its own physical strength. And as long as you drink alcohol, you will definitely fall asleep. No matter what kind of elite monster you are, a boss monster or a lord monster. The more you drink, the more you sleep. Everyone stepped over the sleeping dwarf guards with relaxed expressions and arrived at the palace. The Dwarf King, who was sleeping on the high throne, was awakened by the sound of Zhang Yang kicking open the palace door. He opened his mouth and let out a roar. He seemed to be asking which dwarf was so bold as to disturb his king's rest. When he saw clearly who was coming, the Dwarf King was even more furious. This group of intruders could actually walk into their own palace without any knowledge. Where are your dwarf warriors? Where are your dwarf guards? They all drank fake wine, right? He slowly stood up, the golden armor he was wearing shone with astonishing magic power fluctuations. He raised the golden axe lying aside and rushed towards the crowd with his short legs. Zhang Yang moved his neck bones and squeezed the finger bones of his hands until they cracked, with an impatient expression on his face. He was quite frustrated along the way. He only cleared out a few fish fry soldiers, and he basically didn't have any part in the important battles. Although Li Laban was also paddling, he was responsible for the investigation work and had something to do, while he and Lu Zioqi were hanging out behind the crowd, and they were so bored that they almost got moldy. In the current boss battle, he would certainly not miss such a good opportunity again. Get out of the way, let me come. If the number of existing subjects exceeds 500, they will receive an additional 300% recovery effect and be immune to 90% of abnormal conditions. Dwarf, physical fitness and strength increased by 20%, agility and endurance reduced by 10%. In the Golden City you built, your strength and constitution will receive an additional 50% bonus. In addition, for each subject who belongs to you in the city, your all attributes will receive a 1% bonus. Zhang Yang was knocked away by a blow, and Li Laban quickly pushed forward. He did not dare to fight with the boss Hard Steel who could knock Zhang Yang away, so he could only use his own speed advantage to fight. Skill bar, slam, war roar, violent power, dwarf bloodline, passive, gold craft. Director who was also a little confused. Shouldn't it? But it has a very abnormal innate ability, golden domain. Zhang Yang was also stunned. Although he didn't suffer any physical trauma, he was severely beaten in his heart. He shouted loudly, activated his innate ability, and his whole body shone with silver light, and he rushed forward without hesitation. Innate ability, golden domain. Or am I really a waste? Is this boss so powerful? He had led his team to play this dungeon 8 times, if not 10 times. It was the first time he had seen such a fierce dwarf king. He doesn't have many skills, and his attributes are not comparable to those of his own dog, Black Carbon Head. Could this be an ordinary level boss? The expression on the dwarf king's face changed instantly. Then the next moment, I just heard the sound of Duan. That unparalleled power directly broke down all his defensive postures and knocked him away. The next moment, his expression became strange. Golden Dwarf King. Is it just an ordinary copy of the Lord Monster? Moreover, he majored in the fighting series. If he hadn't completely crushed his attributes, it would have been impossible for him to be knocked away. You know, Zhang Yang is the top student in the 4th grade. Maturity stage, 4 stages: infancy, growth, maturity, and senescence. He turned into a silver light and flew back, slamming into the palace, which was completely made of gold. Golden Field. Everyone. Basic attack, 8,962, basic defense, 8,499, vitality, 1963350/1963350, magic power, 453570/453570. Just after a brief fight with the Dwarf King, the unstoppable posture immediately reminded him of the fear of being dominated by Lu Xiaoqi. If the number of existing subjects exceeds 100, an additional 20% attack blood-sucking attribute will be obtained. Lu Yang also immediately started to prepare his skills. Because Lin Qingqing's magic power was greatly weakened in the Golden City, the power of her skills was very weak. At this moment, she could only fish and swim with Lu Xiaoqi. Lu Xiaoqi's eyes flashed, and the Eye of True Knowledge activated. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, My Talent is Called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 226. At this moment, the 3 entries under this innate ability are all lit up. This means that all 3 attributes are in effect. Therefore, the Dwarf King they faced now had 5 times more attributes, and his strength and constitution were increased by an additional 50%. Not to mention getting 20% attack blood stealing, 300% recovery effect and 90% abnormal immunity effect. I knock. No wonder it's so fierce. Lu Xiaoqi took a breath of air. No wonder this copy is called Golden City. No wonder this boss is called the Golden Dwarf King. It turns out that in this Golden City, every additional dwarf can increase its overall attributes by 1%. For the sake of convenience, Lu Xiaoqi and the others used crooked ways to get all the dwarves drunk and entered a state of drunkenness and dreams. But not a single dwarf was killed. This resulted in the Dwarf King receiving full blessings of his natural abilities. No wonder he can crush Zhang Yang and knock him away. Lu Xiaoqi immediately reminded everyone to be careful and announced the effects of his talent. Everyone was shocked after receiving his hint. Li Laban, who was fighting the boss, was even more frightened. He was afraid that if he accidentally made any contact with the giant axe of the Dwarf King, he would be beaten to pieces on the spot. Director, who also suddenly realized, but the look he looked at Lu Xiaoqi was a little weird. This guy. Is it intentional or intentional and careless? But how did he know the Dwarf King's ability? It cannot be said that there are no adventurers who know how to identify skills, but they are still relatively few, and those who can check monster abilities so carefully. There are probably only a few people in the world. The information they collected on the dungeon before was nothing more than observing the habits of monsters. Those with identification skills would have a slight advantage, but it was not particularly exaggerated. Intelligence collection still requires more experience. The more experienced adventurers are, the more complete judgments they can make. This copy is unique to the college. The previous intelligence collection was collected by the seniors and leading teachers. Although it is not very detailed, after so many years of hard work, it can be said that the copy has been explored roughly. But no one knows about the most critical talent of this boss. But it happened that Lu Xiaoqi found out about it. Of course, director who can also figure it out. After all, the previous student's clearance was nothing more than one step at a time, steadily attacking from the Golden City, and they could not see the Dwarf King until they reached the castle in the center of the city. At this time, the dwarves in the city had almost been cleared away. Although it was a bit time-consuming and laborious, it also abolished the talent of the dwarf king in disguise. So naturally, he didn't discover such a terrifying ability. But Luzaoki didn't know how to understand the dwarf king's talent, so he used unique props regardless of the cost, and led everyone into the dwarf king's palace without killing a single dwarf. Only then did we see the golden dwarf king in his full glory. This has to make Director Who think more. What is his purpose? Director Who fell into thinking. Although the dwarf king was terrifying, he was still within his control, so he took his time and still had time to think about Luzaoki's intentions. But he couldn't believe it anyway, it was just a wonderful misunderstanding. Zhang Yang calmed down in the golden pit that was smashed out, stood up again, shouted and rushed forward, but this time he did not choose to confront the golden dwarf king head-on, but started to wander around like Li Laban, using use your own knowledge to attack the joints and weaknesses of the dwarf king. However, the defensive power of the dwarf king's golden armor is also quite astonishing, and it won't be effective for a while. With Zhang Yang coming to attract firepower, Li Laban breathed a sigh of relief. Lu Yang, who was behind, took the opportunity to summon his own magic circle. However, under the suppression of this golden city, his magic circle was obviously much smaller than before, and its duration was pitifully short. It could only summon a few fighting robots before being forced to shut down. Under Lu Yang's command, the robot rushed forward bravely, and soon turned into a pile of scrap metal and flew back. Lu Yang. It seems that without the numerical advantage, alchemy is mostly useless. At this time, the dwarf king was annoyed by the two flies. He stopped what he was doing and took a sudden breath. Luzaoki had quick eyes and quick hands, and immediately reminded everyone to be careful of the dwarf king's skill war roar. At the same time, he took out 2 balls of soundproof cotton and stuffed them into his ears. It is worth mentioning that this soundproof cotton is also a prop. The entry is to eliminate 90% of sounds and additional effects. The next moment, a huge sound burst out from the dwarf king's mouth. Zhang Yang was the closest to the dwarf king and couldn't avoid it, so he was thrown away again. Li Laban reacted after Luzaoki's prompt, but in order to escape from the dwarf king's attack range, he was forced to hide far away. Lin Qingqing and Lu Yang, who were not good at dodging, were directly hit by the huge sound and were stunned on the spot. Although this distance is quite far, the effect of war roar is reduced to a certain extent, but you can't bear the fact that the basic attributes are high. With the high basic attribute bonus, the power of the skill is naturally extraordinary. Both of them were crispy mages. After being hit by this blow, they stayed in place for a while, unable to move at all. At this time, Li Laban was far away, and Zhang Yang was lying on the ground and hadn't gotten up yet. He was probably in a daze after taking this war roar attack in front of him. There was no obstacle in front of the dwarf king. It had certain wisdom and knew how to take advantage of it. As the enemy must be rescued if they are in danger, he strode toward the stunned 2 people. Seeing that the situation has reached a critical moment, Luzaoki took off the sound insulation cotton and shook her head. It seemed that she was the only one to clean up this mess. Although a large part of the current situation is caused by oneself, those who don't know are not guilty. I didn't mean it. Director who was in the back, locked his eyes on the soundproof cotton in his hand, his eyes full of meaning. And you said it wasn't intentional? I think you meant it. The golden dwarf king rushed forward menacingly. It was wearing a golden battle armor, holding a golden battle axe, and struck with an invincible momentum. Then a clear sword light appeared in front of its eyes. The whole monster was stunned. There is only one thought left in my mind: what a beautiful sword light. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 227. Customs Clearance and Settlement. Rated S+. Everyone looked at the man in front of them with complicated eyes, looking relaxed and comfortable. It was this man. The boss, who no one could resist, was instantly killed by him with one sword. It was this man. With just one strike, he stole over 90% of the copy's rating. After all, he killed more than just a boss. Strictly speaking, with one strike of his sword, he killed the Golden Dwarf King who was blessed by hundreds of dwarves. Rounding up, it's roughly equivalent to him killing all the monsters in a golden city with one sword. Director whose eyes had such a color as expected. Wei Wei shook his head. This Luzaoki was indeed a thorn in the side. Hey, he had already thought of this when he dared to challenge the graduation examination of the Academy of Secret Arts as a freshman in the academy. This guy may have outstanding talents, but he doesn't know what it means to hide one's strength and bide one's time. He always looks sharp and never misses an opportunity to shine. Little do they know what it means to shoot trees out of the forest, and the wind will destroy them, and what it means to shoot a bird in the head. Not much more to say, just 2 words. It's hard to resist. After the copy ended, the atmosphere among everyone was a little subtle. Director who saw it, but he could only sigh slightly, helpless. Logically speaking, for every dungeon, the leading teacher should comment on the students. Praise them for their excellence and point out their shortcomings, and encourage them to work hard. But this time things were different. Everyone's performance was completely covered up by Luzaoki alone. Although he only fired one sword. If we talk about the previous advancement, the abilities displayed by everyone can be regarded as remarkable. Compared with their peers, they are completely crushing. Whether it's Li Leiban's investigative ability or Lin Qingqing and Lu Yang's ability to clear monsters in a large area. Even Zhang Yang showed his unparalleled defensive power, making him very suitable as a shield tank. Not to mention the flaws. Everyone's flaws are still so obvious. Li Leiban has always lacked a decisive attack method, and his body is fragile. Lin Qingqing even revealed her spiritual flaws, she is afraid of ghosts. Although Lu Yang's profession seems to be flawless, its strength is still a bit lacking. Once he encounters such a relatively targeted environment, he immediately stops working. Zhang Yang's problem is also a commonplace. He has no means of long-range attack, and his escape ability is also a little defective. When facing most attacks, he chooses to fight hard and dodge as a supplement. With everyone's problems exposed, Luzaoki seemed very embarrassed. He seems to be really perfect. With his round auxiliary ability, one hand of Holy Guardian directly increases everyone's combat power by a large margin. The round healing ability, Stars Shining, is even more speechless. If you talk about close combat with others, Arashiyama will tell you what fear is. As for long-range attacks, let me ask you, can you withstand his sword energy? The only thing that has not yet been exposed is its large-scale area of effect destruction capability. But even with his toes, he knew that in the dungeon of Mermaid Lake, he, Luzaoki, could intercept all the mermaids behind him. How is it possible without AoE skills? In fact, the CD of his AoE skills may still be very short, and the damage is very exaggerated. Otherwise, how can one person kill all the fish in one go? Facing such a flawless player, being his teammate is both a blessing and a tragedy. Fortunately, you can fully express your talents without thinking about other things, because no matter what happens, he will be standing behind you to protect you. And the sad thing is, no matter how you train and cooperate, he was always out of tune with the other team members. Because he is perfect in all aspects and does not need to cooperate with others at all. Nor does he need other teammates to make up for his shortcomings. But this development looks very powerful in a short period of time. However, it was weak in the later stage. Take Zhang Yang as an example. As a top student in the fighting department, he may have learned 6 skills related to melee combat out of the 9 skill columns. The remaining skills may be allocated to defense, self-protection or escape abilities. In this way, his melee combat ability is almost maxed out. As his realm improves, his skill level increases. In terms of melee combat, he can become almost invulnerable. And what about Luzaoki? He has 9 skill columns, but he has learned treatment and assistance related to occult arts, long-range swordsmanship and melee combat skills, and may even have also learned the perception skills of the exploration series. Although such complicated skills can temporarily give him far greater strength than others. But in the end, it will only become loose in everything. No matter what it is, there is no way to perfect it. It was even said that it would cause great trouble to his further cultivation. Because after reaching the peak of moonlight, the adventurer's training is no longer just about improving all aspects of attributes. They need to understand the rules and combine them with their own skills. How could Luzaoki achieve this with such complex skills? Luzaoki knew nothing about what Director Who was thinking. If he knew Director Who's true inner thoughts, not only would he not panic, he would even want to laugh. Are your skills mixed but not refined? Want to know about the infinite skill bar? Want to know about unlimited skill upgrades? Does the Sunyao realm need to understand the rules? Need a combination of skills and rules? Sorry, we are cultivators. Don't give me those useless things. I play on the West Coast. With the Golden City dungeon cleared, today's training has come to an end. Different from everyone's weird expressions, Luzaoki was quite happy in her heart. Because in the final draw, he never expected that he would win such a thing. City of Gold props. After expansion, you will get a city made of gold. View detailed attributes after expansion. Spells released within the city will be absorbed by the city, their power will be reduced by 90%, and converted into pure energy to charge the city. The city can grow by swallowing gold, gems, or similar props. The Lord of the city will receive special bonuses within the scope of the Golden City. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 228. Legendary props. Moreover, it is a type of prop that Luzaoki has never seen before. It also has growth properties. Oh my god. Is it so magical? Luzaoki could hardly close her mouth. Even though it was a bad idea, he was used to seeing all kinds of rare treasures. When he saw such a powerful prop, he couldn't suppress the joy in his heart for a moment. Not to mention anything else, just one of the attributes. The city can grow by swallowing gold, gems, or similar props. What does that mean? Don't forget, Luzaoki's package column comes with a stack of 999 plus. In other words, give him a city of gold and he can achieve infinite improvement like a matryoshka. Let the attributes of Golden City grow geometrically. This is more than just exploding. Luzaoki thought that her left hand and right hand had a city of gold plus, and then the two city of gold plus turned into a city of gold plus with a pop sound. City of gold plus max. Tisk tisk tisk. The picture is so beautiful that Luzaoki feels impatient just thinking about it. After saying goodbye to everyone, Luzaoki returned home and immediately started the plan to devour the city of gold. What was slightly different from what he imagined was: the Golden City swallows the same type of props and does not inherit the properties 100%. It has a golden 5-pointed star underneath its entry. Each time an item of the same type is swallowed, part of its 5-pointed star will be filled. After probably swallowing 9, the entire 5-pointed star became sparkling. Luzaoki calls the state 1-star Golden City. After reaching the state, the original entry of the prop also changed a little. The city can grow by swallowing gold, gems, or props of the same type. The current status is, after expansion, you can choose an additional advanced entry. Luzaoki put the 1-star city of gold in the package column, and then got 999 plus 1-star city of gold. Then it started to devour. Repeatedly. After the golden city arrived at the 9 five-pointed stars, the color of the entire prop had changed from the original bright gold to red gold. It seems that if it continues, it will turn into a red mythical level item. The content in brackets after the entry has also become 9 advanced entries to choose from. Luzioki looked at the prop in front of her and couldn't help but take a breath. A legendary prop, with at least 9 entries, can you believe it? And you have to pay attention. These are all advanced entries, not including basic entries. Counting the basic entries, how many attributes does this have? Is this a growth field prop? Love it, love it. But when Luzioki wanted to continue to devour the advancement, a new situation finally appeared. This is exactly the same as him using breath-strengthening equipment. The progress bar is stuck. Originally, the swallowing effect of Golden City was not completed instantly, but it only took 1 breath. But after 9 stars, it becomes extremely slow to devour. It doesn't mean that it can't be swallowed, but it may take a long time to complete a wave of swallowing. Luzioki patiently tested it and found that it would take about 3 hours for one 9-star city of gold to devour another 9-star city of gold. To complete this advancement, it needs to swallow 9 9-star city of gold. That's 27 hours. Seeing the slowly beating progress bar, Luzioki smiled bitterly and had an ominous premonition. The process of upgrading into a mythical item may not be as smooth as Luzioki thought. But Luzioki didn't panic at all. This thing was just for fun. Whether it succeeds or not. To be honest, after getting over that excitement, Luzioki didn't care much anymore. No matter how powerful it is just a prop. With Luzioki's ability, there is no upper limit to his own growth, and he doesn't expect this item to make him soar to the sky. Luzioki accompanies her teammates to download dungeons every day, fish and paddle, and enjoy her life endlessly. Everyone belonging to the city is in the city and receives additional attribute bonuses. Not to mention him, even if he had the power of the world, it would be difficult to do it. He caught Lu Wanyi with a backhand and kissed her wildly. Lu Wanyi, who was kissing directly, had her legs weak and her eyes widened before letting go with a smile. But unfortunately, even though the light it emits has changed from red gold to orange, it still does not reach the standard of a mythical, red, item. Such days lasted for more than half a month. What is this concept? Luzioki asked for kisses several times but was ruthlessly rejected by Lu Wanyi. Only once when she had no choice but to kiss Luzioki on the face. If Luzioki hadn't opened infinite resources, it would have been impossible to achieve it. Spells released within the city will be absorbed by the city, their power will be reduced by 99.99%, and converted into pure energy to charge the city. But looking at the 999 plus 9-star city of gold in the package column, he had no interest in doing it again. The attributes have changed drastically, and even the name has become 3 question marks, as if waiting for the owner to rename it. In this regard, Luzioki could only say that he was cheating. Since the confession, although the two of them broke the window paper, the sister has become more shy than before. Props cannot be stacked or discarded. But he didn't care, he just regarded it as a little fun between two people. After that, my sister became even more wary of him. When she saw him approaching, she became more frightened like a little rabbit and immediately dodged away. After expansion, you will get a city that will never wear out. View detailed properties after expansion. How can Luzioki be willing to obey? Not to mention that it was not successful in the end. It can only be said that the loss outweighs the gain. To get it to its current state, 9 to the 10th power of props of the same level as it need to be put in. Wouldn't it be delicious if everyone in the world was given one? Go back in the evening and bring a little surprise to your sister to enhance the relationship between the two. And Luzioki's golden city was finally completely devoured during this period of time. The following days became an ordinary routine. After the city is expanded, you can choose from 9 advanced entries, 3 advanced entries, and 1 ultimate entry. Luzioki knew that this was because her sister was worried and had not yet completely opened her heart to him. In order to strengthen this thing, he spent a huge amount of resources, which is rare in the world. Not to mention kissing, even touching her hands would make her blush and her heart beat. However, Luzioki has no regrets. After all, resources are meaningless to him. He can only improve a little bit. If there are so many legendary items, why should I insist on using them to advance to mythical equipment? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, My talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 229. The wind is very noisy today. It's late autumn in the blink of an eye, and the sun is still bright red but not as hot as before. The banyan trees beside the road have taken off their coats, leaving only their bare trunks. Luzioki arrived at the renovated arena early this morning. The second phase of training was officially announced yesterday. They have spent more than half a month working on improving the tacit understanding among the team members and how to deal with any emergencies. If a team's tacit understanding and cooperation can see the progress bar, then the progress bar between them is at least 80%. Although there is still room for improvement, it is definitely not something that can be accomplished in a short time. In other words, it would be rude to buy copies of the school for free. So Director Hu officially announced that the second phase of training is over and will gather at the arena tomorrow morning to start the third phase of training. That is, officially starting the battle with other teams, testing the waters. According to Director Hu, the team invited by Daijing Academy is the ace team from previous years. He only missed the championship by a little bit. It's a pity that bad luck, one move was missing, and they were ultimately defeated by the Dark Horse team from North China. After so many years of training, one can imagine their strength. Director Hu was even surprised that they agreed to help Daijing Academy train new contestants. Although it is said that they have a certain relationship between teachers and students, with their strength and status, they can find time to give guidance to the younger brothers and sisters. In 4 words, unbelievable. Hearing Director Hu boasting about the adventurers in this team, Luzioki was a little curious and couldn't help but feel a little more expectant, so she rushed to the arena early in the morning. But to Luzioki's disappointment, he didn't see the seniors after waiting for a long time. The only person I saw was Director Hu, who had a big beard and a serious face and walked in Chiron. He set up a projector in the center of the venue, took out a small teaching stick in his hand, glanced at the 5 people, and said slowly, "Let's first understand the characteristics of the participating teams in each region, so that you won't be deceived because you don't understand each other for the first time." As he spoke, he posted a video. What appeared in the video were several burly men, each 2 meters away. They were quite big. It felt like the muscles on their arms were bigger than Luzioki's head. When facing the giant lava beast that was more than 10 meters high, no fear could be seen on the faces of the big men. There were even a few with their upper bodies exposed and holding heavy weapons. As if they got some signal, they shouted something and rushed directly to the boss with fanatical expressions on their faces. He picked up a mace, a giant hammer, and a big stick, and smashed them randomly. 80. 80. 80. Brother, it's done. Although there was only screen projection and no sound, Luzioki still automatically completed the dubbing for them in her mind. The lava beast fell to the ground with a crash and turned into white light. Several people beat their chests and screamed into the sky. Yeah. The video stopped at this point, and Director Hu began to explain. These are unique adventurers from Northern Europe. They have a special name, called Berserkers. The main ability of the Berserker is to rely on Berserk transformation to greatly increase his own attributes and skill damage. Advanced Madness also has the characteristics of being immune to abnormal control and recovering one's own consumption when attacking. It can be seen that their fighting style is very wild. Almost all of them only attack but not defend. This is the performance after becoming crazy. If you want to become a Berserker, you must drink a special item, the Blood of Madness. This prop is made using a very unique method and is one of the most important secrets in Northern Europe. However, depending on the quality of the mad blood, the power gained after becoming a Berserker is also different. Even if the best Berserker doesn't carry any equipment, after turning on the madness, he still has the ability to be invincible. So if you encounter such an opponent, remember not to confront them head-on. Because the duration of their madness is very limited and consumes a lot of money, the best way to deal with them is to fight them in a roundabout way and delay them until their madness time is over. After the madness ends, no matter how strong the Berserker is, there will be a short period of weakness. Taking advantage of this opportunity, you can easily win. When Luzaoki heard it, I knocked, I know this. Isn't it Olaf? To deal with him, I, Luzaoki, have hundreds of ways to make him crazy. If he wants to feel strong enough to fight me, I, Lu, don't mind accompanying him to the end. If you are like me, then this thing is simply, stay cool. As a diligent and honest person, Liu Yang took the lead in raising his hand to speak after listening to Director Hu's description. They themselves should also know that they have such serious flaws, right? Don't they have any remedy? Director Hu nodded. Student Liu Yang asked this question very well. Of course there is a way. Director Hu clicked on their images on the curtain. Berserkers can further master the ability to become Berserk through training. They can choose to suspend this ability before the Berserk time is over. And if you pause the mad transformation, you will not fall into a weak state. You can even restart the mad transformation at any time to catch the enemy by surprise. In this way, if you only notice that his madness disappears and mistakenly think that his madness is over, there will be a heavy price to pay. Director Hu paused as he spoke. As for how to judge whether the Berserker has ended his madness or is suspended, this can only rely on the mental game between the two parties. If the other party is a capable person with very good acting skills and successfully deceives you, then you can only consider yourself unlucky. However, it is easy to solve this situation, just use long-range attacks. Anyway, remember, don't get close to a Berserker easily. Even if he is in a state of residual health. Okay, next we need to learn about a special adventurer called a shaman. After talking about the class, Luzaoki was really eye-opening. In addition to the Berserkers, Director Hu also introduced them to shamans who are good at making Tenku and using halo skills, fighters who get stronger as they get fleshier and increase their movement speed when they have residual health, and ninjas that Luzaoki has seen before. And a special adventurer who also comes from the country of Toba, where he lived a good life, an onmyoji who is good at controlling ghosts. After talking about these professions, Director Hu paused and turned his eyes to the door. Everyone who was still immersed in what Director Hu said suddenly heard a hearty voice. Hey! I'm a little late, I'm sorry. Luzaoki felt that this voice was extremely familiar, as if it had sounded in his ears thousands of times before, so much so that when he heard this voice, his ears couldn't help but hurt a little, as if someone had picked it up with his hands. He turned around immediately with his eyes widened. A pretty figure was slowly walking towards the crowd. Seeing Luzaoki's expression of seeing a ghost, she even winked playfully and showed a weird smile. The person coming is none other than Xiao Yan. Global copy. My talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 230. Of course Xiao Yan is not the only one coming. Behind her were four slim figures who exuded a touch of coercion. Just by looking at the momentum, you can tell that everyone is at the peak of the moonlight. Except Xiao Yan. Although this class teacher's realm has improved slightly, breaking through from the early stage of Yuehui to the middle stage, his aura is unstable, and it seems that he has just broken through. Lu Zioki, rightward arrow _ rightward arrow. Look at others, then look at you. Sister Yan, you came from the same team, why did you do so poorly? Although she was far away, Xiao Yan still noticed his disdainful eyes, and seemed to immediately understand what the traitor was thinking, and couldn't help but give him a fierce look. Xiao Yan, don't you know why I'm so bad? Snort. The woman in the robe noticed the eye contact between the two, and a strange expression appeared on her face. Lu Zioki understood this expression very well. He often acted like this when he was the sixth child. But when placed on the face of this originally dignified and beautiful woman, it was difficult for him to describe it as obscene. The woman in the robe tugged at the corner of Xiao Yan's clothes and laughed softly, "Hey, is this the traitor you will never forget? He looks quite handsome." Xiao Yanan blushed and snorted, "Don't talk nonsense. Who keeps forgetting it? Why are you so angry with this bastard?" "Ah, yes, yes. I'm just angry at him. So as soon as I heard his name was on the training list, I couldn't wait to come over." The person who said this was another woman. Her hands were empty, but she was surrounded by a crystal ball. This crystal ball exudes a faint magic wave, and it seems to be a great treasure. She had the plumpest figure among the five, and her pretty face was full of charm. She looked at Lu Zioki for a while, then nodded and said the above words leisurely. Xiao Yan couldn't hold herself any longer and said angrily, "Ayun. You. Okay, be serious." The woman who interrupted Xiao Yan with the last word seemed to be the core of the team. She had been expressionless, but as soon as she opened her mouth, even Xiao Yan, who had always been carefree and very strong, could only give up. Her expressionless face was different from Zhao Xueqing's pretentious coldness. She seemed to have real facial paralysis. Even if she opened her mouth to speak, she could not see any changes on her face. She was wearing a strange device on her hand. Lu Zioki couldn't help but look at it carefully after seeing the cool shape. I have to say that the dual disc that appeared in a certain anime in Lu Zioki's memory cannot be said to be similar, but it can only be said to be exactly the same. Yes, that's the Yu-Gi-Oh who yelled "My turn, draw a card." This look really brought back Lu Zioki's long-dead memory, making him have to look at it a few more times. The last woman was relatively silent. She walked silently at the back of the team holding two short blades. She wore a tight-fitting leather jacket that perfectly outlined the curves of her body. Xiao Yan nodded and whispered, "Where did you get this thing from? Who else knows this besides me?" A group of 5 people walked to the stage. The woman leading the group started chatting with Director Hu, while Xiao Yan went straight to Lu Zioki. Lu Zioki was non-committal and changed the subject. "How is it? Is the secret book I gave you useful?" "What? I didn't expect that you, Sister Yan, and I have participated in world-class adventurer competitions, right?" Xiao Yan crossed her arms and glanced at Lu Zioki with disdain, as if to say. Lu Zioki subconsciously said, "What dongmei?" Although the two of them were far apart, the conversation between them reached Lu Zioki's ears accurately. Soft as if there were no bones. "Well, this is my student and younger brother, Lu Zioki." Xiao Yan first introduced Lu Zioki to the 4 of them, then pointed to the expressionless woman and said, "Boss. I've seen you for a long time. Nice to meet you." He looked very enthusiastic and stretched out his hand to shake hands with others. As she spoke, she puffed up her chest proudly, looking proud of herself. "If I say I don't know at this time, will I get beaten? I figured this out on my own. Apart from you, my family is the only one practicing it." Xiao Yan thought that he had heard of Min Dongmei's name, and nodded affirmatively, "Yes, it's that Min Dongmei." Then I felt something was wrong and seemed a bit vulgar, so I quickly suppressed my smile again. Lu Zioki, Xiao Yan greeted, long time no see. Then she pulled Lu Zioki to her teammates and began to introduce them openly. It's true that my family is the only one practicing. It's me who should say it's a pleasure to meet you. I have to sigh that Lu Zioki's ears are really sensitive. This is my boss, Min Dongmei. These hands. Forget it, just save the description, just 4 words. With great perseverance, he resisted his urge to squeeze, quickly let go of the other person's hand, and smiled at her. Seeing her serious face, Lu Zioki seemed a little worried. He asked a little strangely, "What's wrong?" Seeing that he didn't take it seriously, Xiao Yan hesitated to speak, and finally could only whisper, "I'll talk to you about this later." Well, that's right. Lu Zioki shook her head when she saw it, secretly saying that she couldn't afford it. This outfit should have been quite explosive, but unfortunately she is not only petite in stature, but also looks ordinary, and she also comes with a pair of A's. But even though he heard it, he pretended not to know anything and looked at the 5 people walking over slowly with an innocent expression. "My dear, Sister Yan, I already know everything about the thoughts in your mind. Hao Ren is my brother, Zhao Sueking is the concubine I booked, not to mention my sister." Lu Zioki glanced at Xiao Yan's chest muscles, swallowed her saliva, and decisively chose to play dumb. I thought this woman with a cold face would flatly refuse, but I didn't expect that she actually stretched out her hand and shook Lu Zioki's hand, then stared at Lu Zioki for a long time, and then said meaningfully after a long while. Lu Zioki didn't pay attention to what she said. His attention was entirely on Min Dongmei's hands. "Sister Yan, long time no see." Lu Zioki scratched her head and smiled, "How could I expect to meet you here?